And over the next 3 weekends, we'll be staging 3 debates on Britain's membership of the EU. Joining me now to discuss immigration in the EU are the UKIP MEP Diane James, who's campaigning for Britain to leave the EU, and the Conservative MP Diane Green, who supports the Remain campaign. Welcome to both of you. Diane Green, let me come to you first. The French Prime Minister says the future of the EU is in, quote, grave danger. If the EU is in grave danger, why would we want to stay in it?
Because it's useful to us, it makes us safer and more secure and more prosperous, and therefore it's worth saving from our point of view, and indeed the other member countries.
How does it make us more secure?
It makes us more secure because the way that we cooperate with other European countries, indeed the European institutions that are set up, things like the European arrest warrant, data sharing and so on, are really useful to our police and our security services.
But we share data with the United States.
Terrorism.
We're not the 51st state.
Not on the same automatic basis as we now do.
No, there is automatic sharing of intelligence information between Britain and the United States through GCHQ and the NSA.
There is, and we have a separate treaty with them. It's not as automatic and quick. I think that the key difference is that we can exchange information now within minutes with other European countries in a way that with other countries in the world it can take, and indeed with other European countries before we sign up to these measures, it takes days and weeks, and obviously that means that particularly in cases of terrorism, and you know, sadly we live in an increasingly dangerous world with global terrorism, actually that kind of European cooperation is increasingly important.
Diane James, Europe faces a migration crisis.
Yes.
Your solution is to turn Britain into Fortress Europe, isn't it?
No,
Fortress
it's not.
Britain, isn't it?
No, it's not to turn it into Fortress Britain. It is to regain border control for the United Kingdom. And that's a position endorsed now by a number of countries, number of member states across the European Union. You've got 5 countries already that have reimposed border controls to some extent. And, in the last week, we've had France say that they will extend their border control, their passport control, as an emergency measure because of the terrorist attacks in Paris.
Right.
Now, border control is needed because under the current system, freedom of movement, people, services, transport and such also means freedom of movement for terrorists who come in, for weapons that come in over the Balkan states.
But we have border controls.
We don't have border controls, not sufficient border controls. If somebody comes in via, for instance, the Mediterranean states or via the Balkan states, they have then gained entry to the European member zone. If they
can't then move around.
If they ultimately get their passport, their EU passport, ultimately...
But that can take 10 years in Germany.
No, not necessarily. It's 5 years in Germany, for instance. It could be granted much, much sooner if the Dublin Agreement is actually changed and asylum seekers get a faster processing. They can then come here to the United Kingdom.
What do you say to that?
Well, it's not 5 years in Germany, it's 8, and if you've got a criminal record, you can't get one. So the stuff that Nigel Farage was saying about those disgusting scenes in Cologne was just wrong. But I think it's almost ironic that if the Out campaign is saying that strong border controls are what we need, then actually pulling out of Europe would have the practical effect that our border controls that are currently at Calais, thanks to a treaty we've signed with the French government, would pretty certainly come back to Dover. So all those people we've seen in those wretched conditions in Calais wouldn't have to stay there because they would find it much easier to get to this country and claim asylum here. So actually...
But if they couldn't get in, if they didn't qualify for asylum status, we'd have the power to deport them, would we not?
We would, after a legal process, but the point is the first point they'd be stopped wouldn't be Calais, when they're in France, but would be Dover, when they're in Britain. And once they're here, of course they can claim asylum, and we know, because we have proper legal processes, it takes a lot of time and a lot of expense to deal with that.
Well, Damien, he's already accused me of getting my facts wrong. He's got his facts wrong here in terms of the agreement in terms of stationing our teams, our support staff, our policing, our border control in the French ports is a France-UK agreement. It's got nothing to do with the European Union. If you're now suggesting that the entente cordiale between France and the United Kingdom gets torn up just because we leave the European Union, I think that's fanciful and I think that's totally misleading. Well, so I'm sorry, I don't agree with you on that one. It's very simple.
France signed that treaty with Britain as a fellow member of the European Union.
No.
And the French Interior Minister has said that, of course, they would look at the Le Touquet Treaty. Of course it would be at risk. And do you think the people of Calais want that camp on their doorstep? Of course they don't. It would be in the French interest to stop doing us that favour.
How would David Cameron's renegotiation of our membership help address any of this?
The area of the renegotiation on this is about the extra pull factor that comes from the perception that the British benefit system is easier to access than other people's benefit system, and that therefore there are people coming here simply to milk the benefit system. And I think what a lot of people think about immigration is that they are much more relaxed about people coming here to work and pay taxes and so on. They don't like people coming here to exploit our welfare
But
state.
what he's looking for, the Independent Office of Budget Responsibility has said, is, quote, unlikely to have a huge impact. And indeed, you may marginalise one pull factor, but by the huge increases, the substantial rises in the national minimum wage that are coming along, you've just increased that pull factor.
Well, I think it's a point of fairness that's what get people really sort of
maybe,
emotional.
but it's unlikely, in the words that they will be able to have a huge impact.
Well,
that's on numbers. It's numbers people seem to be
clearly,
worried about,
can't tell
and this will have very little impact on the numbers.
What the numbers will be, but I do think people can do distinct and make a distinction between those who are coming here to work, who benefit our economy and benefit all of us. They pay taxes.
But are we agreed that it's unlikely, even if it seemed to be fairer, that it's unlikely to have any impact much impact on the numbers?
Well, we don't know, and yeah, we're all.
Well, the OBR
guessing.
is a pretty good guess.
The OBR is guessing. I mean, as you say, they're good guesses, but it's a guess.
Nigel Farage says that he'd slash immigration even if it meant lower economic growth. Do you agree?
There's two parts to your question, Andrew. George Osborne has predicated his fiscal strategy on high numbers of immigration. UKIP's strategy is predicated on let's have individuals who come here on a points-based system who deliver real value to this country, who aren't subsidised via the tax credit option, and who actually meet the needs that we have here in the United Kingdom. Now, currently, as we well know, we want engineers, we want medics, we want nurses, we want lawyers. The UKIP strategy has never ever been to stop those individuals coming in. What we're saying is that the impact of low-skilled immigration on this country is negative, and hence Nigel's position.
But my question was that even if it meant slower economic growth, would you still cut the numbers?
It wouldn't mean slower economic growth. No, Andrew, from the point of view, we've made our position very clear in terms of the value of the money that we wouldn't be paying in terms of membership of the European Union coming back into the United Kingdom economy, and actually in terms of balancing the whole position, that would be a positive for us as a country.
The Prime Minister has reportedly refused to meet a group of 40 Eurosceptic Tory backbenchers who want him to ask for more. They think, given the state of Europe, he could get a lot more back to this country. Shouldn't you meet them?
The Prime Minister meets backbenchers all the time.
But he hasn't met this group. They wrote to him in November, and he hasn't met them.
I think any backbencher who wants to meet the Prime Minister has ample opportunities to do so. I'm a backbencher. I can get to see the Prime Minister. He spoke to the 1922 committee very, very recently, so all these points can be raised. I think it's possible that this story is slightly overblown.
All right. Thank you very much, both of you. We'll be coming back to these issues in the weeks ahead, of course.